Okay. And we're live. Welcome to another episode of Elevate Your Grind, brought to you by the Cannabis Lab. We're going through the membership of Cannabis Lab here. We've got a lot of time on our hands, but the good thing is there's a lot of great people that are involved with our group. Unfortunately, we're still dealing with the COVID-19 issue. It looks like we're going to be doing this for a while, but a good thing is we get to catch up with a lot of our friends, bring you all some really good content that we'll hopefully enjoy. My guest today is someone who's been very involved with Cannabis Lab. Our founder, Robert, touts him as a very big success story of Cannabis Lab. You'll see him at almost any event. He was at our conference, had some of the coolest swag that he gave out with his company, Mr Cannabis Law. And now he's still focusing on cannabis, but starting to move into the psychedelic aspect. Somebody who really has their finger on the pulse of the medical side of this. Please welcome Mr Cannabis Law himself, Dustin Robinson. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course, man. Well, I really appreciate you joining us today. Looks like you're sheltering in place at home. For you, Dustin is one of the people in Cannabis Lab that we are actually pretty friendly. Funny enough, we joined this conference. We were supposed to start recording it at about 10, talked for about 20 minutes, and now we're just getting into the podcast. So hopefully we have some content left to share. But Dustin, you to me, you're very entrepreneurial, right? Just the name of your business alone, Mr. Cannabis Law, great name. The swag that you give out, it just really it's an eye-catchy title, but then you come to the table and you back it up. It's not just like one of those attorney commercials you see. What was, and we're going to get into your story after this, but what was your idea for Mr. Cannabis Law? Because some people might think, okay, that's just a catchy name and an ad in a phone book, not someone who's going to be respected.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was looking at the company name, prior to getting involved with Mr. Cannabis Law, I was helping people already in the cannabis industry, really for free. I got involved in it and I was helping different people. I was kind of at a point in my life, we'll get into that, where I was in a transitional period and I was helping people out in the cannabis industry, having a lot of success with different clients, helping friends and family out really in the industry. And when I decided to come out with my law firm, I saw that everyone was really hiding from who they were. And even my clients, I advised them not to put cannabis in their name, because when you put cannabis in your name, you get social media issues, you have banking issues, you basically put a target on yourself. So when I decided to call myself Mr. Cannabis Law, one of the intentions was really to just say, here I am, world. Now I'm not trying to hide what I'm doing. I am a law firm that's exclusively focused on the cannabis industry. And really, I also wanted to deal with the issues that some of my clients were dealing with when they do have the word hemp in their name, or CBD, or green, or leaf, or one of these names that attracts attentions from the banks and from social media. And sure enough, I had trouble getting my professional liability insurance. Facebook took down my page within a day. Wow. Instagram wouldn't allow me to boost posts. My banking, I had to figure out ways around that. So, it really educated me more on the challenges my clients had. And it gave me more value to actually service my clients and help them through those issues. But also, I was very concerned originally that the name was like too catchy and didn't match the level of sophistication of service that I was able to provide. I previously worked at Big Law. I worked at Holland Knight for several years. I'm a lawyer at heart. I love the law. I mean, I am big on law. I was one of the law school people that actually liked law school. I was a law school dweeb. I loved accounting school too. I got my CPA, got my law degree. So I was worried that the Mr. Cannabis Law was like a little bit too catchy. And I think that has been, to some extent, been a challenge. I think sometimes people see the catchy name, but then once they have the conversation with me and they understand my level of expertise and my passion for the industry and for this area of law, they understand that it's not just a catchy name. We provide what I think is probably one of the most unique services to the cannabis industry that's out there.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, I follow your social media, and the content that you put out for free is absolutely amazing. You can see your passion and your drive for this industry, but even things like, and I know we'll get to this later, but the stimulus package, you sat there and read it and decided to say, this doesn't benefit your business whatsoever, really, because, you know, cannabis companies really can't access this, but you're just like, hey, everybody, I want you to understand it. Boom. You came out with graphics and everything else, and that was absolutely amazing. And we'll circle back to that. So you said you were an accounting nerd, you were a law nerd in school. I can tell that because you went to the University of Florida. You know, I went to Florida State, so I've got to take a dig at you, right? But you also looking at your LinkedIn, it looks like you went during the good years for football, so it must have been really enjoyable. What led you on that path? Because when I look at your bio, you know, you have a law degree, you're a CPA, and then you also have a real estate license. I mean, you have a lot of professional titles there. What led you on that path as you got into college to say, hey, accounting, legal, these things are going to go hand in hand? You know, did you see it that way? Was the goal always to be a lawyer? Or you know, tell me the thought process.
No. I mean, I'm very fortunate to have a father and a mother that ingrained into me the concept that knowledge is power. I've always believed that. And it's not just about making money, it's about helping others. And right now, and we'll get into the stimulus stuff, I mean, man, understanding the stimulus bill is power. It's unbelievable the way I'm able to help people, and it's so fulfilling. So
we can touch on that now, actually, because I think a lot of people are going to want to understand that. So we can get back to your story of being a UF nerd. We get it. But so you decided the other day to sit down and read an 800-page bill because you wanted to put good out into the world. So, you know, tell us about that, you know, being that law nerd that made you do that.
Yeah. So it's interesting because obviously when the coronavirus first hit, my first instincts were to reach out to all my clients, see how they were impacted, see how I could help. So some of my clients, as we know, you know, in the cannabis industry, it's actually, for the most part, the plant touching companies are doing pretty well. But what people don't realize, I work with a lot of different ancillary businesses, and a lot of those ancillary businesses also have other businesses outside of the cannabis space. So, you know, I started getting phone calls from friends, family, all them, trying to help them out just on how to kind of pivot in their business if they were having issues. And then the stimulus bill came out, and I really didn't expect to dive too deep into it, but my phone started blowing up. My friends, family, clients, they knew I had an accounting background, they knew I had a legal background, and quite honestly, you kind of need both of those backgrounds to read the stimulus bill. If you're just an attorney and you don't understand kind of the accounting and the tax aspects of it, or you're just an accountant and you don't understand the legal aspects, it's challenging to read through that 800 pages. So I had everyone coming to me asking for help, and they were telling me wild stuff, that this person's eligible, and I heard that I could get this money, and I'm like, wait a second, I don't know if any of this is true. I'm reading articles that just don't make sense. So I went right to the text. I spent a couple days reading through the 800 pages several times, and it's actually an unbelievable bill. I mean, almost everyone is eligible for this. Not everyone, but in some way, shape, or form, I could find a way that you are eligible for this bill. And look, I'm not saying that in a way that we're trying to find loopholes. Everyone is impacted by this coronavirus. I don't even care if you're a cannabis company whose revenue is increasing. And I've had a lot of different conversations about this with different lawyers about, you know, if our revenue is increasing, are we eligible for these loans? Yes. Anyone who thinks that these marijuana companies are not negatively economically impacted is just very, very wrong. They're having issues with employee turnover. Their employees are getting sick. They have tremendous amount of costs. And by the way, we're just a couple weeks into this thing. Yes, their revenues popped at first, but look, when people don't have the disposable cash to go out and buy cannabis, when their stimulus money can't be used to go buy their medicine, well, guess what? They may stop, you know, purchasing that much money. So I'm not saying that there's going to be any sort of sharp decline to these plant touching businesses, but all I'm saying is that I certainly think that they're negatively economically impacted, and I certainly think that they should be eligible for this money. So really, I jumped into it. I learned it, and before I knew it, and I'll be honest, in the beginning, I was like, wow, I could charge money and make good money on this. And very quickly, the calls started rolling in. I was like, you know what? This is a time where people just need me. They need my help. They need my expertise. I'm giving it for free. I'm working harder than I've ever worked in my life and making less money than I've ever made in my life. And but I am more fulfilled than I've ever been. I sat with someone just yesterday where we were able to apply for, we basically have him set up where he's going to get, he thought his business was done. He thought his business was totally done. And we're going to get him probably around $250,000 to $300,000. He was shocked. And I didn't charge $1 for it. And, you know, him leaving my place and he wanted to hug me, but he didn't because of the coronavirus. So we gave a little pound and he went on his way. And it was just super fulfilling. So I think, you know, if you have the ability to help people, whether you're a lawyer, accountant, or even if you're a freaking musician that could play music for people and bring some happiness into their life, I think that's what you got to do right now. We're all in this together. And, you know, I'm happy that I could help.
No, 100%, man. And you said it best. You know, we could charge for this. We could step up and really make some money. Long story short, you and I talked about this before. We don't know how long this is going to go for. So even companies that are doing okay right now, you know, it doesn't hurt to have a cash reserve. This could go till July, August. We don't know. You know, over at Real Cloud Pros, we're doing the same thing for our clients. We're dropping our services fees to cost just to make sure people can video conference so they can work remotely. So this way we can enable clients from an IT standpoint to continue working through these times. From a legal standpoint, I can only imagine, like you said, your phone ringing off the hook. And just so everybody knows, if you go to his Facebook page, I think also on LinkedIn, you've got a like 8-step guide or longer on who's eligible and how to get the money that I believe your marketing team helped you put together. I know you did the content, but they made it very pretty.
Yeah. I just when this all hit, I decided actually to bring on a brand new marketing team to help with my social media because I knew that the information needed to flow quickly. And I'll be honest, you know, I could put together content, but I can't put it in nice slides and make it look pretty and get it out to the public very quickly. So I actually went out and spent the money on a top marketing agency, OO & Co. Good friend is the one who actually owns it. And she has her team right now, literally working 24/7 for me, putting together the content that I'm trying to put out to the public. Because I know, you know, there's a lot of law firms that are, you know, trying to set up webinars next week or the week after, or they're drafting articles. My whole philosophy with this right now is people need the information now. So if I wait to put on a webinar next week or the following week, it's not that it's too late. I don't think, you know, the money will be there. But people need hope right now. They need to know what they need to be doing right now. So as soon as that money becomes available, I want people to understand the steps that they need to take. So that's why I think it's so important that I work with the marketing agency to really help me get the content out as quickly as possible.
Sure, man. So I'm going to take that opportunity to transition back into your history, right?
Yes.
So, you know, I look at your LinkedIn and ironically, one of your first jobs listed is an assistant director of marketing before you found your true career calling. You know, so you get, you know, you're in UF, you accounting degree, law degree, you get into marketing, and then you find yourself at Deloitte. You know, was marketing kind of more of an internship? But tell me about that experience. Did it give you kind of an insight into being an entrepreneur and running your own business and figuring out, okay, it's not enough that I'm the best at what I do. I also have to be able to get myself out there and let people know that I'm here.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've always been an entrepreneur at heart, which is somewhat not contradictory, but you know, a CPA and a lawyer is usually, you know, you stick to the rules. There's rules, you follow it. It's black and white. It trains your mind to think a certain way. And quite honestly, those types of ways of thinking don't lend themselves very well to being an entrepreneur, where you really got to think outside the box. You got to be willing to take risks, calculated risks. So yeah, back in college, I actually started my own tutoring agency as well, where I was tutoring people, and that's how I paid my way through college. Or through law school. I didn't have to take out any student loans for law school. I paid my way all through with that tutoring money, and had money left over after that. But yeah, I mean, look, everything starts with marketing. At the end of the day, I could be the best attorney ever, and you could have the best IT solutions company in the world. But if people don't know it, it's not worth anything. So, you know, you got to put your name out there. You gotta learn to market. And basically, you know, I got through law school. I'll kind of walk you through really quick my history. You know, I got my CPA, worked at Deloitte for a bit. the plan was not to go to law school. My brother's an attorney. He kind of, is the one who said to me, look, there's a lot of opportunities in law. He was doing very well, and he's a very successful attorney as well. And he said, you should at least consider it. So I took the LSAT. I did well. Got into UF. I loved law school. I dove into it. It was so different than accounting at first. Accounting was all numbers, and then all of a sudden law school, I had to learn how to write again, which I hadn't been doing for a long time. But it reminded me of my passion for writing. And so got through law school, did very well in law school, top of my class, law review, all that fun stuff. Got a job at Holland Knight. It was great working with Holland Knight. A lot of people have their horror stories about big firms. Great firm, treated me great, worked under some of the best partners. Some of them were ex-judges, unbelievable experience working there. Nothing bad to say about the guys at Holland Knight. I got an opportunity to go in-house with a client. They were a multi-state manufacturing company. I went in-house. It was really more of like a CFO role, but I was handling obviously all their legal work as well. We grew the business tremendously, and I was with them for a little over 5 years. I was incentivized through equity. I sold out my interest in that company about 2 years ago, at which time is when I started getting into the cannabis industry.
So so everyone I talk to, there's always a story that pulled them into the cannabis industry, right? There's not too many people that I've spoken to that just said, yeah, I wanted to get into cannabis, so I did it, right?
Yeah.
It's typically an experience with a family member, seeing what the effect the plant had. I just talked to Mike Smallin yesterday, and it was through his daughter and his brother who did that. Or it's somebody who was in accounting in a legal side, and they got one hemp company or one cannabis company came to them, and then they saw the opportunity, and then from 1 became 10, became 20, and next thing you know, they're running an entire practice focused on cannabis.
Yep.
What was that moment or that instance that drug you into cannabis?
Yeah. Well, really, so when I sold my interest in the previous business, I was actually planning to take a year off. I had promised my fiance at the time that I would take a year off because I had, up until that point, I'd been working like a dog, and I'm somewhat of a workaholic, and I'm working on that. But so I was going to take a year off, but about a few months into that year off, I actually got asked by some friends that were out in Denver to help them with a transaction relating to cannabis. I knew nothing about cannabis, but I learned all about the laws in Denver. I learned all about the tax aspects of the transaction they were doing, because it actually involved a couple different states. And we were able to draft this transaction in such a way that it really took advantage of the tax law, the state law, the cannabis side of it. And I realized with my background, it is kind of unique, understanding all the tax aspects and the legal aspects. And then, like you mentioned, I also have my real estate license. So that was the first deal I got put on. And then I got referred by them to another person that had more of a cannabis real estate transaction that they were putting together. It was a REIT. So, I helped put together that transaction, and I literally utilized every bit of background that I have.
They asked the right person.
I realized, this is an industry that really, and what I also noticed was when I talked to the partners at my old firm at Holland Knight, which I'm still very close with a lot of those partners, they weren't servicing the cannabis industry because of the gray area. And I was like, wow, there's a huge void in high quality big firm service. And of course, there are other big firms like Ackerman. They're doing a great job. Greenspoon Martyr. I give tons of props for some of these big firms getting out there and taking that risk, because look, the big firms are taking more risk than a small guy like me. They have hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue at risk, that by them getting into the cannabis industry, it's a little bit risky. So I give them tremendous props. But early on, I saw that the big firms really weren't getting very involved. And I said, look, there's an opportunity for me to provide big law type of, quality, but provide also that boutique firm attention that's really needed for the cannabis industry.
Oh, that's awesome, man. And it's a friend that drug you into it. So one of the cool things that I like about you is Mr. Cannabis Law and yourself, you're both located down here in Florida, but you operate across the country. How hard is it, especially as a small firm? You mentioned Ackerman, you mentioned Greenspoon. They have offices across the country. They've got, benches of lawyers that they can bring in to specialize, that they can say, okay, this group right here, you guys are focused on cannabis, and we're still going to worry about our main business that keeps the lights on. For you, this is all you focus on, and we'll get into your new focus in a little bit. But how hard is it for someone like you to operate nationally, living in Florida, especially when we realistically have 14 operating companies here and 22 licenses?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, my goal is I would love to operate more just in Florida, but just like we were talking about before
Yeah.
the interview, it's challenging in Florida. You have 22 licensees, really only 13 are operational. Most of those 13 had their attorneys and their IT
And I
solutions
think only
partners.
3 of them are headquartered here, right?
Yeah, and so exactly. So, it's challenging here in Florida, and I've been very fortunate that, I am working with a few of the cannabis companies down here, but I also saw that I really needed to expand my reach outside state, much like we talked
Mhm.
about that you did as well. For me as an attorney, obviously there's also the challenge that, unauthorized practice of law in another state. So I've actually developed a network of attorneys in other states
Very
that
cool.
I'm also able to co-counsel and work through when I bring in those out-of-state clients. So, it's quite honestly, I don't see the big firms as competition. I think the service that I provide is very unique. First off, there's plenty of business to go around.
Yeah.
So, I try to help them out as much as I can. I try to help all the people around me out, and I know that it'll come back to me. But realistically, I'm not necessarily competing with those big firms. I provide a totally different, I'm more of like a strategic partner with people. I'm holding people's hand. I'm building pro formas, business models. I'm helping them find investment. And not to say these other firms don't do that as well, but they have a lot of red tape around them, and they have a lot of different clients, and the billable hour, and how they structure their
Yeah.
fees. There's certain things that they just can't be as flexible as I am. So like you said, I'm more entrepreneurial, and I try to bring that entrepreneurial spirit to all my engagements with my
You-
clients.
You're almost like the Batman of lawyers, where you don't have to follow every law. I mean, you don't have to. You're kind of like the vigilante. You're still going for the same goal, but they have the red tape that you don't have to worry about. So
Exactly. And look, at the end of the day, I eventually, as my firm grows, I'll start putting in, some more of that red tape as well. The key to any business is,
yeah,
as you grow, put just the right amount of red tape. Don't go overboard such that there's too much bureaucracy, which is what essentially I was doing at my last company in the manufacturing. We grew from like 40 employees to 120 employees. So it was in a very short period of time. So it was very challenging making sure you're putting up those SOPs and those processes and that red tape, but also, making it malleable so that you still have the flexibility of a small company.
no, I'm excited to see that, because I have a feeling that you're going to create an environment that's going to foster a lot of entrepreneurship within your walls. And you always want to build a great big firm, and hope people will stay with you. But if you spin out some other great lawyers out of your firm, that's a sense of pride as well. So you've been practicing in cannabis for a while now, which by any means is not an easy place to practice. Is a brand new industry. We're all still finding our feet. And you decided, okay, cannabis isn't challenging enough. I'm also going to take on another illegal narcotic, and well, in some ways. And you created Mr. Psychedelic Law to start to support the legalization of psychedelics for, I believe, mental health therapy, correct?
Yeah, so really, 6 months ago, I had several cannabis clients talking to me about getting into the psychedelic industry. And quite honestly, as I wasn't a user of it and I wasn't very familiar, I thought they were crazy. And I'm
Yeah.
like, thanks but no thanks. It's already a stretch that I'm doing cannabis law. My friends all think it's funny that I'm doing cannabis law, but I kind of said thanks but no thanks. But more and more clients started asking about it. So then I started asking the doctors I represent in the industry. I represent several doctors, cannabis doctors
Hmm.
in the cannabis industry, and all of them, hands down, believed in psychedelics. They believed in psilocybin. And unbeknownst to me, some of them were already doing ketamine therapy, which ketamine is a type of psychedelic that's actually legal. And so I dove into it. I started talking to all the leaders across the country who are decriminalizing. We got Denver, Oakland, Santa Cruz, Illinois. I started reaching out to all of them and built some really strong relationships with the people leading those movements, and they educated me on the and we've had some really great conversations about what that legal framework would look like. It's a very different drug than cannabis. You know, a lot of people think, is the legal framework going to look like the cannabis? No, it's going to have to look completely different. And there's a few different schools of thought on what that legal framework would look like. And I currently am not totally committed to any one legal framework. But yeah, so basically I decided to start a not-for-profit. It's not for profit. It's not something, the whole focus is on decriminalization and raising awareness. It's called Mr. Psychedelic Law. We have a medical advisory board of the top doctors in the state. We also have a spiritual advisory board. And my goal is to use those advisory boards to help me and the other attorneys I'm working with, such as Paula Savchenko, who's supposed to be with me today, but you'll interview her in a future
Paula's
date.
Got too much work for us. She's keeping herself busy.
She's very busy. She's doing a great job. But you know what we're doing is we set up these advisory boards so that they could drive the legal reform. I don't want lawyers or business people driving this legal reform. I want the doctors and the spiritual leaders and the people that truly understand the power of this substance to really drive the legal reform. Dustin Robinson I may be the scribe, but I'm just the messenger. You know, I want them to really give me the lead. So I've already drafted a resolution for Hallandale. I have a commissioner who, previous to this coronavirus, gave me her commitment on sponsoring that resolution. Obviously, the coronavirus has created some complications with that. But we're talking to a lot of different cities right now. And honestly, to my surprise, they're all very, very interested. I haven't had one door shut in my face since I started this, knock on wood. I'm sure I will, but all the cities I've talked to have been very open. They want to learn more. We're educating them. We're helping them understand. We want to collaborate with them so that we could really create the best legal framework within their city. And then eventually, obviously, we want to expand it from a state perspective, because at the end of the day, really, criminalization is really a state thing. And all the cities could really do is make a decision not to allocate resources to arresting or bringing any indictments against anyone who is caught with possession or use of it. But really, it's at a state level that we can make we're just not ready yet for a state thing. So my goal is in 2020 is to get some cities on board, get some momentum, raise awareness. Then we could start talking about doing some stuff at a state level.
No, that's really interesting. And psychedelics to me are very, very interesting. Like you said, something I know absolutely nothing about. I actually learned about it. I watch a lot of stand-up comedy. I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts, and apparently this is not one of them. But Gary Goldman, who's a very famous stand-up comedian, suffered with depression for so long, and he even tried the ketamine therapy and was talking about it on I think it was like Bert Kreischer's podcast or something like that. And it's really interesting. My wife was with me, who is an addiction counselor, and was saying, she's like, I don't know. And she doesn't believe in it yet, but we've both looked into it a little bit more. And the more and more we look into it, it's starting to open our eyes with, the ketamine paired with the psychotherapy and what it's doing for people. So,
and I got to give a plug since you're talking about it. So you're right. The psychedelics, the three main conditions that it's showing great results is addiction, depression, and PTSD. And if you think about all of those conditions, something is just off in your brain. Yeah. There's something that's not letting you get past. And you being an IT guy could appreciate this analogy. When you take some of these, psychedelic drugs, if you do them in the right set and setting, really what you're doing is kind of like a reset with technology. When your computer's not working, what's the first thing you do? You
You
hit turn
turn
it
it
off
on,
and turn
turn
it
it.
on.
Yep.
And really that's kind of what you're doing with some of these psychedelics. At least that's how it's been explained to me by some of the medical and spiritual advisors that I work with, is it's almost like a reset, and you're giving your brain another opportunity. You're also, for PTSD, you're giving yourself an opportunity to engage with the event that's causing PTSD and be totally disassociated with the event. And I've had my doctors send me, I get videos all day from people who are getting these treatments, and it's amazing to see someone with PTSD talk about the instance that is causing their PTSD, such as, I had one guy who got in a car accident with his sister, and the sister passed away in the car right next to him. And it's amazing watching him talk about that event with no emotion and able to disassociate from that moment and engage with that moment and fix the issue around it and fix his emotions and have that breakthrough with the therapist and give the therapist a hug after and realize, like, that event wasn't his fault. There's no reason to let that event, control him forever. And it's just a really powerful moment. So I'm actually working with another not-for-profit, the ketaminefund.com. Great group of guys. Warren Gumble and Zappy are the two guys who run it. They just shot a film with Lamar Odom that should be getting released in like the next couple months. As most people know, Lamar Odom had a lot of trouble with addiction. They took him out, and I'm not going to spoil the film or anything like that, but they saw tremendous results. I think I think that they treated him with ibogaine. I think it was ibogaine, which is another type of psychedelic. So there's ayahuasca, there's ibogaine, there's ketamine. But Zappy and Warren, through the Ketamine Fund, they help people find doctors to provide ketamine treatment for people with addiction and depression. And it is unbelievable the work that they're doing. And I highly recommend, if anyone knows anyone who's addicted or has trouble with depression, I strongly recommend, you're welcome to reach out to me. I will put you in touch with these guys. They're doing incredible work.
Dustin, I think you're doing incredible work. You're doing some great stuff with Mr. Cannabis Law. You're really putting a ton of good out into the community with everything that you do. Your social media is incredible. I know you have a ton of work to do, so I won't hold you too much longer. But let's let people know how they can get in touch with you. Let's plug your social and your websites. And we're definitely going to have you back on to talk more about this, get you back on with Paula, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of you through these webcasts over these few
Absolutely.
months.
So I'm different than most. I don't have an answering service, so you call me direct. You got my cell. You could text me. It's 954-258-6084. You could also email me at drobinson@mrcannabislaw.com. Also follow me on all social media at Mr Cannabis Law. That's pretty much it. I post a lot on LinkedIn. I have an IG, business page, Mr. Cannabis Law. I also have that for LinkedIn, Facebook, all that stuff. So just follow me. And also Mr. Psychedelic Law, hashtag Mr. Psychedelic Law. I also have IG page for that as well, if you're interested in following any of the psychedelic stuff that's going on.
I highly recommend, especially if you're in business, if you run a business and if you're in the cannabis space, or if you just run a business in general, follow Mr. Cannabis Law for sure. Because like I said, even with the stimulus package and any big event that's happening, you're kind of explaining it for us. And that's awesome, man. Stay safe, keep working hard, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me. Stay safe and be well.
No problem.